we are going to develop a very cool application that's going to allow us to do 3 actions. First of all, we are going to be able to translate some code from one language programming to another. For example, from JavaScript to Python, or from Python to R, or something like this. The second action is going to be to fix code. Sometimes we are developing code and we don't know very well what's the problem or why it's not working. So we can pass this snippet of code and then we'll have the solution and the result and the code solved. And third, what we're going to be able is, if there's some code we are not able to understand, we can pass this code and then we're going to receive an answer in plain language so we can understand this function or this code. How are we going to be able to build this application? We're going to use 2 main components. First of all, we're going to use Streamlit. Streamlit is a library from Python, and thanks to this library, we are going to be able to create a web app or a web where we are going to be able to select all these different actions, input our code, and then once we have everything prepared, click on run. All of this is going to take around 50 lines of code, and we are not going to need to worry about HTML, CSS, or Angular, or whatever. Just with 50 lines of Python code, we are going to be able to develop this web. And second, when we have everything set up and we click on run, we need some processing to be able to perform those actions. The thing we are going to use for this processing is going to be ChatGPT. And thanks to its API, we are going to be able to integrate this API into our web. And this is going to take around another 50-60 lines of code. And this is why I think it's a very cool project, because just with around 100 lines of code and just programming in Python, we're going to be able to develop a very cool application, which is very, very cool for the task of translating, fixing, and explaining code, and just using Python and just around 100 lines of code. So are we ready? Let's go for coding. Before going to code directly, it's always nice to have an idea of what we would like to achieve. In our case, it's easy because we already have the final results and we're going to go through it to understand a little bit what we are going to build. But if you are doing something similar at your home or at work, it's always nice, even if it's just pen and paper, draw a screen and then just add the components you would like to have on your app. It can be the buttons, the titles, or how it's going to look like. But again, it's always nice to be very clear of what you would like to achieve so you can focus on really the main components and don't lose time in other things that may not be so interesting. And believe me, it happens many times that you can spend many hours in some feature that at the end is not useful for your main objective. So let's go through the app, the final design, and then we are going to understand a little bit the components, and then we are going to go to code and to define each of them. So first of all, here we have the web application. We have a title just explaining what we are going to do, translate, explain, and fix code with GPT. We are going to need an API key from OpenAI. We will see later how to get that API key. Then we will select the model. We are going to have 2 options, GPT 3.5 or GPT 4. And then the actions. Again, translate, code explanation, or fix any bug we might have on the code. We have the section of input and output. For the input, we need the language of the script we are going to add to this window. And then here we have a window just so we can add the code. As you can see, depending on the type of code we have a different formatting. If I, for example, choose JavaScript, the colors change a little bit because they take into account the language programming we are using. And once we have this, we have here the output. So if we are doing a translation, we will have to select an output language. If we are doing code explanation, the only thing we can pick is natural language. And finally, if we are going to fix a bug, again, we just can choose the code fix, because in any of those cases, we need to decide any output language. Let's go, for example, for translate, and let's pick an output language. In this case, let's try JavaScript. Here we have the code. We select the output language. Let's click run. And here we have the output. It has converted this Python function into JavaScript. So now that we have clear the sections we have, like the title, the select boxes, and then the input and output section, let's go directly to code. So let me close this one let's take this out. And here what we are gonna do is first create a folder where we are gonna have our code. Code. And here we are gonna need two files. First of all is gonna be the app. This is where we're gonna have the main part of the application, okay, the web page, and we're gonna change the format to .py. The second one is gonna be where we're gonna have something called utils. This is the part of the code is gonna help us to call or do the request to ChatGPT and have the output results. So once we have this, let's open with Visual Studio. Okay, so for now they are empty. And now what we are gonna need is to install the libraries. So here I have my command line. You can use the normal command line or the Anaconda if you're using something like Anaconda. In my case, I'm using Anaconda with a virtual environment. So what we are gonna do first is move to this directory. So basically cd from change directory. We are already here. And now we are gonna install 3 libraries. First of all, we're gonna need pip install Streamlit. This is the framework we are gonna use to build the web app just using Python. Once we have already installed Streamlit, the next one we are gonna need is a plugin for the Streamlit framework. So it's called pip install Streamlit ACE. And that's gonna be very useful for the type of application we are building. And the last one, so we already have everything installed for creating the web. Now we are gonna need the one for connecting to ChatGPT. And it's called OpenAI. And with this library built by the OpenAI company, we're going to be able to connect very easily to the ChatGPT API. All right, we have everything installed. So now what we're going to do is run the web app. Obviously, we don't have anything developed, so we are going to just run an application which is empty. So that's cool because in this way, we are going to be able to be filling each part of the application as we want. So the command is Streamlit run app.py. Okay, allow access. And now to develop easily, where is it? So in order to develop, I'm gonna split the screen so it's easier. And instead of just typing everything in order to not lose that much time, I'm just gonna be copy pasting the code and explaining what's doing each of the things, okay? So first of all, for the app, we are gonna need the 3 libraries we have just installed. Streamlit, Streamlit ACE, and OpenAI. And now we're gonna start to fill this web. First thing we need is to add a title. In order to add a title is very easy. We add st from Streamlit. This is the library we have imported. .write. And then here we are gonna add markdown. So what we're gonna do is do like this. Right. Add hashtags, which mean this is gonna be a title, and then translate, explain, and fix code with GPT. So now we save. As you can see here now, it's saying the source file changed. So we can click on rerun. And now we have here the text, the title of the text, okay? Let's continue. So now what we're gonna do is add a part of the OpenAPI. For now, let's do like this. In this case, instead of writing, we're gonna use again the library Streamlit, and it's gonna be a text input. The title is OpenAPI Key, as we can see here, and it's gonna be a type password. So in this case, whenever we write something, we cannot see the value. If we take off this type and if we delete this, let's see the difference. It's going to be a normal text, okay? So let's put this back here, save. And what we're going to do is this input, we are going to save it in the OpenAPI key variable, because then we are going to need this API key in order to make the request. The next thing we are going to do is the part of model selection. So we go like this, model equal st, and in this case, it's going to be a select box. We have seen write, text input, and select box. In this case, it's going to do a select box with title model and two options, GPT 3.5 and GPT 4. The same for the part of the actions. So let's go like this. We go action equal is the select box. Let me do like this. Select box. And now again, save, restart here. And there we have it, OpenAPI key, the model, and the action, with translate, code explanation, and backfix. Basically, what we do in select box is first we add the title, and then we add the different option we can pick in this select box. So now it's cool, we have the three components, but they are not very beautifully aligned. So what we can do is divide the screen in different parts, so we can more or less organize our different parts of the web. So to do this, we are gonna use st from Streamlit columns. In this case, it's gonna divide the screen in three, where half of the size is gonna be in the second column, 1/4 in the first, and 1/4 in the third column. So basically, what we do now is we take the second column and we change it from st. As you see, the first and last column, we are saving it under this underscore value, which means it's a way to tell in the programmer or the person who's reading this code that we don't care about the first or the last. We just care about this one. And now if we save it like this part is divided in three, one section here, one here, and one here. And we can see this one is the double of this one and this one. So now we have done this for the OpenAPI key. Let's go now for the model and the action. We are going to use exactly the same, but we are going to change it a little bit. So instead of saying the shapes or the different columns, we are just going to say divide me in 4 columns, and then equally with equal size. Again, the first and the last, we don't care. So this is, we have an underscore. We are just going to keep column 2 and column 3. We save, we run, and now we have a little bit better order and better visualize this part. All right, so now that we have this first part, let's go for the input section. What we are going to do is just add some space between each section, and a little trick is just add break lines. First, what we are going to do is add the input language. So we are going to have to decide which is the input, the type of code we are going to input. So again, we have select box, we have the title input, and we like to have a very long programming languages list. In this case, we could add it here in this Python file, but maybe it's going to be like too overcrowded and it's going to be a little bit more difficult to read. So we are going to do a very simple thing. I'm going to use a list of information I already have, a tuple, I don't know very well how to pronounce, and we are going to go to utils. In these utils, we create this programming language, and here, as we can see, we have all the different type of language as input we could pick. So we have this here. Now we have to import from utils the programming languages. And in this way, we have done that to have a clear and more structured code. So now we just import this information and we use it in this input language. And now if we come here, we can select so many languages: Java, JavaScript, all the different options. Okay, so now what we have to add here is the section where we are going to input our code. And this is where it's going to take, we are going to use the plugin Streamlit ACE. So see how easy it is to use it. Once we have the input, we want to have the code content. So in this case, we use st_ace, the placeholder. Let me load this one. And we have the input language, which comes from the selection we have done here. Because here we have selected Python, we pass Python in this st_ace, and in this way it can understand that this is Python and format it in the respective way. Then the theme is to make it a little bit dark, to have the same theme as the web page. Auto update, this is kind of, if we are writing, for example, we can do def, and it gives us different options to update the code. And finally, the value, I have added something by default, which is this one. But if we delete this part of here, we do like this and close. And now if we rerun, we don't have any code, and we have the placeholder, which is input your code, which is, we can read it over here. All right, so now we have the input. Let's go for the output. The output is going to be very similar to this one. First of all, we have to pick the output language. And in this case, again, we use a select box. The title is output. And we have to take into account that based on the action we have picked at the beginning, the options are going to be different. So again, instead of putting everything here, we are going to use the utils, and we are going to add the following dictionary. So what we are going to do here is, if we are picking the action as code explanation, the only option we can have is natural language. If we are picking bug fix, the only option is code fix. And if we are asking ChatGPT for translation, the option we are gonna give is all of this one. So we save, we import in the first file, and then what we are doing again is, based on the action we have picked in this select box, we are going to return different options for the user. If we pick translate, we have all these different languages code, programming languages code. Then if it's code explanation, the only option is natural language. And if it's bug fix, the only output we are going to be able to select is code fix. Perfect. We have almost done. We have almost developed all the web page. So what we're going to do now is add a button here, which is going to be the part of processing all the results. So in this case, it's going to be very easy. But so far, I mean, the idea what we want to develop is something like this, where we use the OpenAI API key that we have first added here. So we use it in order to log into OpenAI. Then we are going to define that prompt based on the model and based on the action we would like to achieve. And once we have this prompt, we are going to do a request to the API. But for now, we don't have any of this code developed. So we're going to do like this. We add it like this. And then if we try to run, once we click, there's nothing happening because there's no function added here. All right. So we already have what is the web page. Now we are going to develop all the functionality in the, let's say, backend, which is going to receive all the inputs from the web page and call ChatGPT. We go to utils, and again, let's import some libraries. We are going to need the OpenAI library. And the first thing we need are the prompts. The prompt is the text we are going to send to ChatGPT in order to request some types of actions. So in our case, we're going to need 3 prompts. Those 3 prompts are based on the 3 actions we are going to perform. So if we want to translate, we are going to ask to, please, let me open maybe. Please convert the code delimited with triple backticks from something code to something. And here is the code. So basically what we are going to do later is fill these gaps, depending again on the selection the user have done on the web page. But the idea is please convert the code delimited from, let's say, Python code to JavaScript, and then here we are passing the JavaScript code or the Python code. If it's going to be a bug fix, please check the Python, JavaScript, whatever code for bugs and provide a solution. And here we are passing the code. And finally, if we want an explanation, just provide a plain language explanation for the code. So very simple prompts. And by the way, those prompts, I've written them based on the documentation that OpenAI have shared on their webpage. So there we will see later we have different examples. If in any case you have any doubt regarding how to create some requests or the type of request you could develop, you have everything on the OpenAI webpage. Next, we are just gonna need 2 functions. The first one, define the prompt. So again, here we have, let's say, the templates. What we're gonna do now is based on the action you pick, the model you pick and everything, we are gonna develop a prompt. So if the action is translate, which is the first one, you go in the prompts configuration, and in this translate section, for the number 0, you put here the input language, then the number 1 is output language, and number 2 is the code. So in this section here, what we are gonna do is fill the blanks that we have here in this prompt. The same for the bug fix and the same for code explanation. So based on these 3 actions, we have 3 different prompts, and then we fill the blank spaces. And once we have the prompt created, the last part is to make the request to ChatGPT. So here we import the OpenAI we use the OpenAI library, that completion and create. So based on the model, we pass the model 3.5 or GPT-4, and then the messages. Here we are gonna see something cool. So the structure is a dictionary where we have the role and the content. In this case, we are using first the role system. And the role system is used to give some context to ChatGPT in order to perform some action. So in this case, what is the context we are going to give before asking ChatGPT for something? We are going to tell ChatGPT that he is an expert programmer and is the most advanced AI developer tool on the planet. Even if you are not very familiar with the answer, you are going to use your super intelligence to figure it out. In this way, with this prompt, we are telling ChatGPT what we would like to contextualize the request we are going to do and perform a little bit better. We could also ask, for example, become Shakespeare, or kind of these creative ways of making ChatGPT think it's another type of person or whatever. And then we have with the role user. Before we had system, now we have user, and now in the content we are going to pass the prompt. Which prompt? The one we have configured here. So let's just save this part. And now we have both of the function. We just import define prompt and request. And then here we have everything. So now it's not going to pass. We can delete this part. If someone click run, we pick the OpenAI key. We define the prompt based on the action selected, the input language, the code content which is passed here, and the output language. And what we do once we have this output? We are just gonna go over here. One second. There we go. And one last thing is, if the action we have selected is code explanation, I want the results to be in a, let's say, beautiful formatted way. In another case, if the output is, if the action is not the code explanation, but code fix or a code translation, we want the result or the output to be in a screen for a, let's say, prepared for a code. So we just save this. Let's put this back in the middle. Yeah. Perfect. And now we have everything ready to make it run. The last component we need is going to be the OpenAI API Key. For this is very simple. We come to openai.com. Okay. Under the developer sections, we go to Overview. And then here under Personal, we go over View API Keys. Here I have one already created, but we can create a new secret key. In this case, code translator. And here we have our OpenAI API key. This key is gonna be needed in order to log in into this request and tell that OpenAI, guys, it's me who's using your API. So it's very important also to save this, because once you copy it, you're not gonna be able to see it again. And also it's very important not to share this OpenAI key, because it's the way you are gonna be identified. So in any case, you have just seen how I have done the process, but in any case, what I'm gonna do later is just delete the keys. All right, we have everything prepared. Let's go to this OpenAI key information. Now we need some code to test. Let's pick the model 3.5 and translate, and then we will see the other action. But let's just first start with translate. Let's go for JavaScript and click run. And here we have the Python function converted into JavaScript. Let's now translate. Let's now try, for example, code explanation. Here you can see it's running. And one important thing in these results is that we don't have this, let's say, coding window, but we have just a plain text window. This is what we wanted. So basically, let's start to explain that we have a function called predict probas, what is going to be the input of this function, and then what it's going to be doing. It's using the library NumPy and all of this. So it's doing a pretty good result. Now let's go for bug fix. And we have to take into account that this code for now, it seems to not have any bug. Let's see what's the answer from ChatGPT. And here what it's saying is that be careful, because we are using the library NumPy, but in any case, we are not importing the library. So just be careful with that. Which is a very nice point on this code, because we have just passed a function, but it's true that we are not importing everything. So in this case, we have not added the NumPy import, and this is just like a kind of warning or a correction. And also something similar, there is one function called predict1probas that we are using here, but we are not defining. So again, just be careful, because we are defining the function predictproba, but we are not defining the function predict1probas. So again, here we have the correction of the code. And with this, we finish the demo. We have just seen how does translate, explain, and fix the code work. And which is very cool is that in less than, for the app and the application, the web, we have just needed 50 lines. For the utils, around 56 lines, where half of them are these programming languages. And this is very cool, because as we can see in just a moment, and with around 100 lines of code, we are able to develop an app, a web app, which is able to translate, explain, and fix code. And I think this is very, very cool, because if we think of this kind of application 5-10 years ago, we would have need a team of people working on that. We'll have need a lot of time, and again, I don't think we will be able to achieve such a good level of performance. And I think this is very exciting and very cool for the developers really like to develop this kind of proof of concepts or application. Let's sum up what we have just done in the video. First, we use Streamlit to develop this web page, and just with Python and 50 lines of code, no need of HTML or CSS. Then, in order to process this input, we use ChatGPT, and thanks to its API, we were able to integrate in our web app. Again, with just 50-60 lines of code and just using Python. All this code, I'm going to upload it to the GitHub repository. So one way to let me know that you like this content is by liking this video or by giving a star to the repository. And I'm asking this because thanks to combining Streamlit and ChatGPT, we are able to develop very cool proof of concept and in a very few lines. And one example of this is this code translator application. So I hope you like the video, you learned something new, and see you in the next one.